Welcome everybody to another brand new episode of It's My Wrestling Podcast. I'm of course, as always, your host Chris Dees. Before we get started, like I always ask, please make sure you hit subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube and hit follow if you're listening to this on any audio platforms. Thank you as always. Today's guest, lady I'm very excited to speak to. She's a former WWE manager and superstar, a firm fan favourite during the Ruthless Aggression era. Real name, Cara Drew, but you might know her as WWE's Cherry. Cara, thank you so much for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure. How are things on your side of the world?
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's going really well over here. I mean, it's a little rainy today, but it's great for our new year. So thanks so much for having me.
No, of course. No, like I said, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. I really appreciate your time. Yeah, as I was saying before we started recording, I'm all too familiar with it being a bit rainy and a bit cold. It's January, it's the UK, it's a bit miserable.
Right.
Yeah, so I can totally relate to that. But no, like I said, thank you for joining me. I'm going to get right into it. Like I said, I was a big fan of yours during the Ruthless Aggression era, but I wanted to go back to the start a little bit more. You obviously, going back to the start, I don't think a lot of people really realise that there was a start for you before OVW and before WWE. You wrestled on the independents for sort of like 5 or 6 years, I think it was, before joining OVW in 2006. Like, how did that opportunity come about from you? Was it from the independents to get that call from OVW?
I actually was friends with a lot of the independent wrestlers, and one friend of mine, his name is Danny Jamundo, who was Inferno Kid. I had managed him a lot and was friends with him. He actually had moved to Kentucky, trying to get signed. He did get signed. So he let me know about OVW having, sorry, my dog's being really needy this morning. He had told me about a tryout training camp for OVW, and he encouraged me to try it. And so I was like, I'm going to send in the application. Like, I'll never get accepted, right? Well, I get accepted. Wow. And then, I find out it's just the weekend. And I'm like, I do weekends all the time. I'll just go and do it. Like, get the experience. Like, I didn't think, anything would come of it. So I go, and I'm like one of 2 girls in the whole class. And I had been on the independents, like you said, for a little bit. So I had already known some of the people that were there. And we just kind of did the weekend there, and it was great. We saw Danny Davis work with us, and Rip Rogers work with us, and Dr. Tom. And, we had a promo day, we had matches day, we did drills and all that stuff. So I was like, oh, great. Nervous, of course, and got back and contacted Danny Davis just to thank him. And he just said, we really see a lot of potential in you. We really loved having you. You are definitely welcome to come to OVW, and was very, very clear it was OVW. It just happened to be the developmental at the time. So that was kind of my in, and I just left a job I was doing really, really well at, and just doing that weekend warrior stuff on the indies, and, took a chance to just move to Kentucky. And, I was dating Judas Young at the time, and that was Danny Jamundo's best friend. So Danny Jamundo had an apartment, and the apartment across the hall from him was vacant. So he kind of got me in a place. So I was living next to him and his girlfriend. So it made me feel good, and that I had somebody close, and it was a leap of faith, to go for my dream. So luckily things worked out and worked out very quickly, I have to say. So.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. My next question was going to be like, how long did it take to find out? But you basically found out immediately, which must have been great. But I assume there were still some nerves in case, you went out there, things didn't work out. Did you have a contingency plan? Were you just going to go back home and just go back to normal life if things didn't work out? I
didn't, which is so funny that you asked that, because I really didn't. I just was like, I'm doing this, and I never went away to college or anything like that. So this was my first time, like, really away from home, and, stepping out of my comfort zone. So I didn't, come to think of it, I wasn't like, oh, if this doesn't work out, I'll come back and do the X, Y, and Z. I didn't. Yeah. Thank God it worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a massive massive risk to take. I don't think I'd be comfortable doing it. So kudos to you. You know, hats off to you for just going for it. I don't think, especially, I think it's a very different business now, though, isn't it? Because that was like, what was that, 15 or so years ago? I think because of the way that the industry has changed, people would probably be a little bit more reluctant to take such a massive leap of faith now.
Yeah, it's definitely a different process, you know, with what they're doing. So, you know, a lot of people started to do that where they would move to the developmental territory, did it with FCW, you know, and trying to do that route. And, you know, sometimes that works. Sometimes you need that reputation and, you know, that experience and paying your dues. And then, you know, they do have a lot that they're looking outside of that culture now. So it's definitely evolved. But I was lucky, like Beth Phoenix, you know, she did the same thing and she moved there and, you know, and she's, you know, a Hall of Famer now. So sometimes going for your dreams and not having regrets, you know, and I just kept telling myself, something's pulling me there. Something's pulling me there. And I didn't know what it was. And I wasn't at that time kind of believing in that kind of like intuition, but it was incredible.
Yeah. Sounds it. I'm very glad that you took the plunge. Definitely.
Me too.
So that time, then obviously you went to OVW. You were there for a couple of years alongside Deuce and Domino, as you're quite fondly remembered for being a part of that group. The Throwbacks, the Untouchables, I think they were known back at the start in OVW. You went up to SmackDown with them after about a year or two in OVW. That's quite a quick turnaround to all of a sudden be thrust onto the main roster. What were those guys like to work with, and like how did your partnership come around with being placed with Deuce and Domino?
Well, and that's really great. It was just kind of well, what happened was I was only there for 4 months by the time I was able to get the opportunity. So we were doing I knew Deuce, we started in the same, he was from New Jersey too, so we started in the same wrestling school, but he would go and train different hours with his dad, and then I would just go with all the other students at the school. So I knew him already. So when I got there, it was like, you know, comforting because you network on the independents and you just know people. So I had gotten a great opportunity to be the ring girl. So for the Wednesday show. So I would sit next to the bellkeeper and the announcers and just kind of whatever they needed. Well, Deuce approached me and said that him and Domino, I had known Domino. He was from New York, but I hadn't known him from Independence. They were working on this gimmick. It was like the greasers and, you know, Domino hadn't been signed yet. It was just all Jimmy, and they were just trying to come up with a gimmick. So they were looking for a girl on roller skates, the old school roller skates. And they didn't know what her name was. They didn't know what she looked like. They wanted to add a girl to the act. So out of all the girls that were there, now this is a story they tell me, or Deuce tells me. So out of all the girls that they were there, they wanted someone new, not because any of the girls that were contracted or signed kind of already had a gimmick. They had a plan for them. So it was hard to kind of wrap them up. And they tossed it around trying to find the right person. So Jimmy had known me and knew my work ethic and just was like, hey, you know, would you be interested? And they took me after the show one day to show me some of the promos because the advanced class would tape promos. So they came up with the gimmick and they came up with the girl. So they're like, we don't know. I mean, this was a Wednesday night. Johnny Ace and the crew were coming Tuesday because they would have been, overtime come over and evaluate everybody. They wanted to put this together. So we had like a week to put it together. And like, we don't know what her name is. We just have to find the roller skates and you have to put her look together, like whatever. It's like, oh gosh. So it really came together in a week. I scrounged everywhere trying to find old school roller skates. And I did. So then I kind of just put the outfit together, which was just more of the button down with the high-waisted belt and then the skirt and the skates. So it came together pretty quickly. Fast forward, there was, stuff where I almost didn't even make the tryout for Tuesday because I wasn't signed. Jimmy got it worked out, show up. Nobody knew about the gimmick, did really, really well. Got signed that day. Me and Domino got signed that day with Johnny East. Johnny didn't even know I could wrestle. So he was like, I didn't even need to wrestle. I just thought you were good for the gimmick. And I was like, yeah, and it was just incredible. So we ended up, so that was a Tuesday. On Thursday, we get a call that they wanted us to go to Raw on Monday. So again, fast forward, and we're like, what? Like, we just put this group together. We had marinated. We literally figured out my name that week. So, and we were it was between Sandy and Cherry. So Cherry for the Outsiders and Sandy from Greece. And we just thought Cherry was more wrestler-esque, if that's a word. But so we went on the road that weekend. And thank God they decided we were supposed to do something with Superstar Billy Graham, and it got canned. But thank God we all agree we ended up debuting a year to the date of when we got signed, which was really the best thing for us, because we needed time to marinate and just kind of get, comfortable with each other, which was the best. So yeah, it did all kind of come up pretty quickly. So luckily, and I'm very blessed to just look back on that part of the career and just know that things happened really great, which showed the belief they had in us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like it sounds like a bit of a whirlwind, like a lot of stuff happening all at once. But I guess sort of like trial by fire, throw you in at the deep end when you're going on to nationally shown TV show. I guess just throwing you in at the deep end is probably the best way to go. See if you can adapt to it.
Yeah, it was great. And then we did a few loops but stayed in OVW and really honed our craft and honed our characters and did a really great storyline with Cody Rhodes and Shawn Spears, which was a great blow off at the end of that year. So yeah, it was incredible. And OVW was doing really, really well at the time. So not only did we have practices, but we had our own TV shows. And then from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we always had shows that were booked. So we were just as busy. So it was good to get that lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask about the character, because obviously it's not, to the best of my memory, it's not really the kind of character that we've seen very often before you took on the character of Cherry, and obviously you had the Greasers. Maybe the Greasers was something that we might have seen a bit more in the past, but we'd never really seen any divas or women's wrestlers in like the poodle skirts and, like you say, the roller skates. So I was going to ask who you took inspiration from, but I guess there probably weren't many women like that who you could draw inspiration from. But then I read that you took inspiration from a lady just behind me on the wall over here somewhere. I can't even point because it's backwards. Miss Elizabeth.
Yeah.
So what was it about her?
Well, they were just kind of what really got me into wrestling back then. I just loved her, beauty and her, demure behavior. And that's kind of what we played off of as far as Deuce, Domino, and Cherry. It was like Deuce and Domino were the heels, and I was really the baby face, and that didn't really come across as well as we wanted to on WWE TV. I mean, it was definitely a lot more on OVW TV, which you never really saw that, where it was like the mixture of the characters. So we took a lot from, and I took a lot from her too. So a lot of the storylines, if you watched OVW, were ideas where I would come up with, where Cody and Shawn win me and they put me on this pedestal with like that Saturday night main event, and then the part where, Deuce and Domino attack Cody and Shawn, and then they want to give the crack him in the mouth to Shawn, and I jump in the way and he shoves me to the ground, that another Saturday night main event. So there was a lot of things about her that I took because she had such an impact, yet did so little. It's kind of like the less is more thing. And she just had elegance, so I wanted to I always kept that in mind when it came to a lot of the stuff that I did with her and in mind. So yeah, she was really my inspiration. I know a lot of people say like the Peggy Sue character, but that wasn't anything. It was great at the time and great for storyline, but that was kind of almost, Peggy Sue was never really a character. It was for that storyline, for that moment. It seemed last minute because they never really had spoken about Peggy Sue, and then all of a sudden this Peggy Sue shows up. You know what I mean? So it wasn't anything I could take from it, but she just had a different way of adding to the matches and adding to the storylines that I took from now.
Yeah, she's one of those managers who you sort of like, you always knew she was there without her like always being the center of attention. They're the managers that I really like because they're the ones that you're always thinking like in the back of your head like, ooh, is this going to come into play? without them being too much. You know, there's been loads of managers. Somebody off the top of my head, somebody like Zelina Vega, because she's so brash and loudmouth. She's always there, and you knew about it. But as you say, Elizabeth had such a grace and such an elegance that you never sort of factored her into it. But that's why it was so surprising when she did get involved. I loved Elizabeth. I love Macho Man. I thought like you said, you hit the nail on the head. Their dynamic was great because you don't really see a heel with a face manager or vice versa.
Right.
It's never really happened since.
Yeah, you didn't. So yeah, I felt like there was a lot more we could do with that because that kind of dynamic wasn't really used. So, you know, that's a little disappointing, but you know, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of things happening, you made your singles debut, in 2008. It was about April sort of time for WWE. That's quite a long time after coming up with Deuce and Domino. So, like, did you find it frustrating having to wait that long to get your first singles match after spending so long, you know, on the independents doing your thing there, and then, you know, how long is that? So a good few years after joining the company.
No, I mean, I was really big into our gimmick. I loved our gimmick so much and so much to do, and you know, I really wanted to do more with it and an entertaining factor. Because I mean, we would use me as like the Deuce and Domino would pick me up and use me with my skates to like hit the other guy or take my skate. Like we never did any of that. So I wanted to really exhaust everything that we could do as a group, in storylines and entertaining before I split off. So, that didn't bother me as much, you know, because it was more disappointing that I was taken away so quickly. I mean, everything happens for a reason, but because I loved our gimmick and I wanted us to do, we knew we had so many creative ideas to do more, but you know, it was good. And, you know, my first singles match was really great, you know, because I was still able to stay true to the character. So, because Cherry never wanted to wrestle. She was scared, you know, so being able to kind of still play that and hopefully slowly evolve into someone who was more confident and could wrestle. You know, I was so much more of a believer in the process and the trueness to character. So all the other stuff was just a job, you know? So, yeah.
Did any of the three of you, any of the group, put up any opposition to being split up at that time? Did you sort of like put it across that you wanted to do more?
We would pitch ideas, but there's only so much you can do when you're at that level, and we were just kind of new. I know for a fact that Dave Bautista had pitched, Rick and Dave Bautista had pitched to Vince to work with us. We were Dave told me when we were on a tour, it was Singapore, Bangkok, Australia. And it was right after the matches, where Deuce had the match with Batista, and then we kind of like played into me, and like, he's like, you know, flexing his muscles or whatever, that match. And then it led to the next promo where I was in Dave's locker room, but then it was with Flair, and then we had a tag match. So it was right after that, because it got so well received, and they liked working with the boys, that Dave told me they were going to call Vince overseas and say, hey, we want to program with these guys. But when you're working with higher level, topper tier guys on the show, they had other plans in mind. So unfortunately, that kind of got nixed, even with them pitching for us, which was great because they really liked wrestling the guys. So, you know, that kind of was a bummer, because that would have been really fun. I still get that to this day, like when I do shows where people just loved that whole me coming out of the locker room and it was Rick in there. You know, Rick's always fun. So, you know, it's just too bad.
Yeah, that's a shame. That is a real shame. But like you say, Vince McMahon's always got an idea, and once he's got an idea, that's it. Just homes in on it and just goes with it. So that would have been a lot of fun. Your debut win was against Victoria, someone who should be in the Hall of Fame by now, an absolute legend. And then another of the greats, who will be in the Hall of Fame one day, Natalya. She got her debut win against you, and I wanted to ask about Natalya, because I saw recently, what are we on now? We're on sort of coming towards the end of January, and I've seen quite a few Instagram posts to yourself with Natalya, Natty Neidhart, and the family, and TJ, and all those kind of guys. Are you just like good friends? It almost seems like sort of like a family thing.
Oh my gosh,
spend a lot of time together.
I live 10 minutes from her.
Oh, okay.
So ever since she got on the road, we became very close. So I consider her one of my best friends, and they're great, and they treat me like family. And just talking to TJ is so fun. I mean, I've never met anybody with, you can say one pay-per-view, or even just like a Raw, or what about tell me who was on the card on this Thunder, WCW. But he knows. He's an incredible mind. He will know who was on the show that day, how long their matches went. Like, his mind is insane. So, and we don't always talk wrestling, but sometimes when I like to pick his brain a little bit. But and then Natty and her sisters and her mom are such a hoot. Like, I have so much fun with them. Yeah. So she's one of my best friends, and we hang out a lot together, and got very, very close. We traveled on the road together. So it's been incredible. And I'm so happy that her first match was with me, and we had so much fun, and Fit was thrilled. Like, when we came back from that match, like, it was a standing ovation. And that feeling is like, we did it, we gave them what they asked for. So yeah, she's incredible. And amazingly talented. Like, I don't know how she still does it after all these years. And funny. Yeah. What they're doing right now is just great. So yeah, she's one of my best friends. I love her.
I was literally going to move on and ask, like, what do you make of what they're using her for at the moment? Because she's been there for a very long time. Obviously, as we say, about like 13, 14 years, something like that, coming up to 15 years, but hasn't held as many championships as you would expect somebody with her level of skill and talent to have. So, like, what do you make of what she's doing with Aliyah at the moment?
Aliyah, yeah. Well, I kind of want to just share the fact that I think that WWE is very smart in investing in Natalya, because you don't understand, like, Natty not only has the talent, the creative mind for wrestling, but she's a super friendly, kind, and giving person. She is amazing with PR and just kind of keeping up with staying relevant. And she's super knowledgeable. She can go out and do speeches and, do all of these like PR events and stuff like that. And she's so great. She has really invested in herself to make herself so viable. So, they had everything in her when it comes to wrestling, talent, ideas, to, she writes columns, she does her YouTube shows, she's constantly active on social media, she stays relevant, they can rely on her for anything. Someone gets sick, they call Natty in, and she never disappoints, and she can handle the media, she can handle traveling and doing all these things. So they're smart, because not everybody has the passion, it's in her bloodline to have somebody like that on their roster. Like, she's just always reliable. So I mean, I think that there's ebb and flows when it comes to storylines. I think things have very much changed when it comes to when we used to watch it. How long did it take to get to the Mega Powers to break up? It was months and months and months before, you bought into the storyline. It was little pieces at a time, and it's just evolved. Creatively, from my perspective, I like that they're starting to now highlight her world records, because they're genuine records that she had, gotten. So I think that they could build it a little bit better if they're going to use that, because Natty's not one for, like, she doesn't care if she loses. She's about the storyline, and she's about meaning and building, equity in these characters that people want to see. So, and that's what you want is, like, in real life, Natalya and her character have equity. She's a legitimate, character. So, I'd love to see where it's going to go, because, Natalya has genuinely made those records, which is incredible. So, it just speaks to her bloodline. It speaks to her passion. It speaks to her work ethic. So, I'm so proud of her. I want to see where it's going to go. and she's so creative. She has so many things going on, and in her mind as far as how to build off of anything they give her. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see where it's going to go.
Yeah, and it's great to see her helping to like put over and build up and bring through some younger talented women as well. Like obviously you got Zaya Lee, Aliyah, both involved in that. So I think it's, if I sounds like a weird sentence. If I was a young woman trying to get into the business, I would want to go to Natalya to learn from Natalya. She, for me, from the outside looking in, I imagine she just understands the business as a whole. Like I think that's pretty much what you were alluding to. Like she understands how things work backstage, the politics. You know what I mean? Like how to, like you said, stay relevant. She's still on TV every week.
Yep, she invests in herself, and she's so smart at that. I didn't. I'm going to be honest. Like I didn't, and I got nervous, and I was, not confident and insecure, and I didn't take all those opportunities. And Natty just constantly reinvents herself, constantly keeps herself up there, and that's why they can rely on her. Because if they had somebody coming in, and I don't know much about Aliyah or Xylee personally, but I know that the office can rely on her to, get it done and help them along. And, because like I said, Natty's not about wins or loses. She's about, the passion and the work ethic. And, she's the epic team player, but she loves this business, and it's just incredible. She's an amazing woman.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I wanted to ask as well about that period of time where you were there, because obviously, let's say, to put it bluntly, WWE haven't had the best track record of using the women as they deserve to be used. Use them in prominent spots. Obviously, like the mid-90s to the mid-2000s were very much all about sex sells and sex appeal and that kind of stuff. But even during your few years on the main roster, there were still bra and panties matches, there were still bikini contests and things like that going on. I know that you were involved in one yourself. So even though women were getting a few more opportunities to wrestle, like talented women like yourself, Michelle McCool, Victoria, Natalya, some of the other names that I've said, it was still a little bit of a weird time. Like, was that ever frustrating that you had such short matches, like 3-minute matches, sometimes 1.5-minute matches, and not being given the opportunity to show what you could really do?
Sometimes it did, because it just seems stale and stagnant. It's a lot more entertaining now. They've got all of these girls, and they're so talented. And every time I watch Sasha Banks, she just has something else super intricate and super entertaining and athletic to, so it's very different. Not to discredit the girls when I was there. It was just what it was, it was just, it was shorter matches, because there were great matches going on at the time. Michelle and Victoria did have great matches, and Natalya and Beth and Melina and stuff, they all had, when they had the time to do it, they always had something. But yeah, just kind of, sometimes it would at the time just kind of got stale. So it's good to see that it's evolved, and, they are making a lot more strides, because they are bringing it home for sure. Those girls are rocking it. So it's good to see that they can showcase now.
Yeah, and it feels genuine as well. Like, it feels like it has actually been earned. Like, some WWE over the years have done lots of things, and it feels like they're doing it for the sake of it. And I think at first, with the women's evolution, there was that little bit of concern, like, how long's this going to last? Is it going to be a flash in the pan? But here we are, like 6 or 7 years later, and the women are still main eventing shows, main eventing pay-per-views. It's brilliant to see. I grew up as a fan in sort of like that mid-Attitude Era time, so unfortunately I was raised on women in wrestling being eye candy, other than Trish and Lita maybe, or Jazz, Jacqueline, women like that. 99% of the time, if you saw them on TV, it was in a bikini, and as a young boy, obviously that was kind of exciting on one hand, but at the same time I was a bit like, I know how great Trish and Lita are, I've seen their main event Raw, I know how well they can wrestle. Why aren't we seeing more opportunities for the women? So no, like you say, it's amazing to see what the women are doing now, and hopefully long may it continue. Another thing I wanted to ask about was, if you don't mind, your release. Releases have been a huge topic of discussion for years now. Obviously, WWE they love a mass release, a mass exodus of talent. But yours was quite a surprising one to me, at least, because you'd been a part of a somewhat pretty big story. You know, the Vicky Guerrero and Edge marriage. You were wrestling as a part of that, wrestling Vicky, wrestling Natalya as a part of it, and then very shortly afterwards, I'm not sure exactly how shortly afterwards, but I'm sure it was quite soon after. You were released. Like, were they upfront and honest about your release? Was there a particular reason? Was it a budget cut, like they love saying these days, or?
Yeah, and that's a great thing to clear up, because I know initially, everybody had their opinions on what happened, but if you don't recall, in 2008 there was a big economy crash, and that's really what it set it out to be.
Right.
So there was and I remember I had seen, as John Cena had done a comment in regards to the releases, and there was, back then, they would release everybody after Mania, and then right before the holidays they would always have a big cleaning house twice a year, if not once a year. So it was just well known, So when we happened to have it, it was at the economy crash in 2008. So there was 2 weeks of talent. So Domino got released the first week, and then I got released the second week. And it was budget cuts, and I know that people had made comments, which was very hurtful as far as why it really truly was released. But if you think about it, then it was like another 2 weeks of them letting a ton of people go in headquarters. So it was the economy at that time. So I don't understand what's going on now with these, it's just haphazardly. They're not like the 2 times of cleaning house. It's bizarre. So I don't really know what's going on, but it's never fun. I didn't take it well. But looking back on it, was the best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't do what Natty does, constantly invests in herself and keeps herself relevant, is always working hard and still trains and all of that stuff. But I was in a different headspace. So I did create my dream. I wanted to be there, but I was also I'm a normal girl. Like, I just came from independence. So, these bikini girls, and, it was intimidating, and I got super self-conscious and insecure and lost my confidence, and, wasn't mentally able to pull myself out and go, spend time more with Regals, spend time more with Fit, and get these times, and we would before house shows, get in the ring and roll around and do all of that kind of stuff. So at the time I was upset and devastated, but looking back on it, I wasn't in the right mental space working there that I should have been. And I had I recognized where I was mentally, I could have addressed it and been better, but I wasn't able to understand where I was mentally. So, it probably was good that I needed that break, because I'm not used to that business, even though I loved the business I had been in it, in that kind of a big environment, it was intimidating to me. So, but I loved it. I wanted to be there, and, I'll go back from time to time and say hello to people, and everybody's so kind and nice. It's just, and I wish I did more, but everything happens for a reason.
Well, I mean, that's what I was going to ask. Like, do you regret maybe not, being more like Natalya in that way, and reinventing yourself and things like that? Because from a quick look through your Instagram, you seem to have a lovely life, a really happy life, always happy, smiling, and out and about with friends and family and things like that. So it doesn't look like you've, had a bad life by any means.
Right. No, I'm very blessed, and I'm definitely in a place in my life where I'm just over the moon. I've been through jobs where I wasn't happy. I've had relationships that weren't good. And, as you get older, you just realize you need to get rid of toxic things out of your life. And now that I'm, in such an amazing place, I bought my brand new home, my first home, and I have everything in the world. I'm close to my best friend. I have a great relationship with my family. You really have to be able to connect to your life and recognize what's good and bad for you. And I have never been in such a good place in my life where I'm just so positive. I can enjoy things. I can, when you shake out all of that negativity and kind of get down to the core of who you are, that's really important, because life is so short, and you have to make sure that your life is as positive as possible. And I'm I have the best people in my life, and it's a small circle, and I have a great relationship with my family, and I love, I was able to buy my own home, and, it's just, yeah, I do. I wish I hadn't invested in myself because I enjoyed being there. But yet the less I stress about something, the more happier I am. Beth always told me, don't do anything that ever stresses you out. If it stresses you out, it's not worth doing.
Yeah.
And I always kept that in mind. So yeah, I'm in a great place in my life. I've never been happier, and I've never been more positive. And, once you get all that toxic stuff out of life, the world is just huge to enjoy. So yeah, I do. I have a really wonderful life, and I'm very pleased for it. And I'm very happy that I contributed to the wrestling world and the wrestling fans, and just know that I achieved a dream, and I was able to live a lot of those things out. I was able to do a lot of the things that Elizabeth inspired in me, and I was able to contribute to the wrestling world as far as a character and fans, and meeting all of those people, and traveling the world, and meeting my best friend, so yeah, it's been good. It's been real good.
Lovely. It's a beautiful story. It really is. It's lovely to hear. I've interviewed quite a few wrestlers, obviously, I've had this podcast for about 16 months, and so many of them sort of like come across as almost a little bit bitter. Regretful, obviously, that things didn't work out the way they should have done, but they seem bitter, or they've got things to say about the company, and you know what I mean? They go online and talk a load of crap about the company, but it's nice to hear from time to time somebody who's only got positive things to say, somebody who's a bit more humble about it.
Yeah. Well, and the company was great to me. They had to do what they needed to do, and somebody that wasn't investing in themselves. So I get it. I didn't at the time, and I understood, and budget cuts was the reason. But looking back on it now, I would have released Me Too. I have to be honest, because I just got so in my own head, and I was self-conscious, and I wasn't secure, and I was not confident at all. Like, they have a business to run. They're not there to hold my hand and get me to where I need to be. They're going to throw you the ball. If you drop it, moving on, so I get it. And I needed to be ready, and I was ready, and I was going for it. And then I lost the ball, I lost that confidence. So, they're not there to hold your hand. They hired you to do a job, and, you need to do it. So I wish I had recognized kind of what I felt mentally, because you don't necessarily recognize it. And I would have made my changes and been different. But I totally get where they're coming from. So I'm not bitter about it now. I wasn't ever bitter. I was just sad, because I wanted to be there. But then, you gotta take care of yourself too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is so refreshing to hear. That line that you just said of like, you would have released yourself if it was up to you. Like, that's a pretty powerful thing to hear, because I think anybody else would probably say, "Oh, I would have put myself on top. I would have put myself at the top of the mountain." But that's really. I'm surprised to hear that, but it's a really nice thing to hear. So let's come on to the modern day then. Not talking about what you did in WWE, just onto the modern day and where you're at now. So what are you up to now? Do you do things like conventions, signings, fan fests, anything like that? Do you ever still get to meet fans and sort of like have those reunions with your ex-colleagues?
I do. We've been doing a lot more lately. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus. I mean, COVID's just put a damper on everybody, right?
Yeah, of course.
We have done a few, and we want to do more. So, I know there's some more talks as far as some more signings. I think my last one was in New Jersey, and they just brought me in for that one. But yeah, we're totally up for that, and it's always good to see. We just can't see a lot of the fans right now with a lot of this. Done a lot of virtuals, just more than in-person ones. So, but yeah, we're totally open to that. None of us are necessarily wrestling per se anymore, but being able to go to the conventions and stuff is definitely something that we're absolutely interested in, because wrestling fans are unique. Hearing them,
yeah,
it's really fun, and meeting them. I mean, that's what we always did it for. I know. When I used to travel with Layla, we would always stop the car before leaving the arena or coming in, and making sure that we talked to everybody. And that's, they're the sweetest people ever. I've been that fan, and, being able to see somebody that you love and come to see, it's just, you have to get back to them,
Yep. Yeah. Did you ever get many opportunities to come over to the UK? Because everybody always says we've got the best fans. Like it's hard really to say that as a UK fan because I've only ever been around UK fans. I've been to one show in America, SummerSlam 2018, and it was such an experience being in the middle of all those American fans.
Yeah, well, only with WWE. I never went independently or on my own. So yeah, we went over there a number of times. I won my first match against Victoria in London, so that was super exciting. And I still talk to a lot of fans on Twitter and Instagram. Chris Mazza is one of the ones that I stay in contact with a lot. He's over there in the UK, and he's always been I consider him a friend now. So. Yeah, so when we would do the, it was about April, we would do about almost 3-week tour over in the UK. So, yeah, just with WWE though, not on my own in regard to like independence or anything like that.
Right. Oh, okay. Fair enough. And the last thing I wanted to ask about that as well. I know you said that you're doing the signings and the conventions and the virtual ones more now. Is there any temptation at all to get back in the ring? Is it something you would ever consider?
I always said Royal Rumbles would be fun, because they are, who doesn't love that surprise appearance? Even before they had the girls doing the Rumble as well, that surprise appearance was always fun, to just see nostalgia to come back. I'd always be open to a Rumble. The boys do the men and then I do the girls. That'd be so much fun. Being there with Beth and Natalya again. Oh my gosh, how fun.
Well, it's only, what day is it today? It's Tuesday, so it's 4 days until the Royal Rumble. So maybe that was a big hint. Maybe we're going to see Cherry at the 2022 Royal Rumble. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed we do. That'd be awesome. Brilliant.
Yeah.
I want to wrap up by just throwing a few little quick-fire questions at you. It's something that I do for all of my guests. Just you can go into as much detail as you want, or you can just give me one-word answers. Absolutely fine. Just your sort of standard wrestling questions that you ask any wrestling fan. So I want to start off with, and I'm going to make them women's wrestling related as well for you.
Okay.
So, who for you is the greatest women's wrestler of all time?
Natalya.
I had a feeling you were going to say Natalya. Don't know why, but I had a feeling you would. Okay, favourite women's wrestler of all time, because there is obviously a difference between favourite and greatest.
Well, I do like watching Natalya. I think right now, Sasha's amazing.
Yeah.
I love watching Sasha. I'd go with Sasha.
Completely agree. She's awesome. She's my favourite of the... Yeah, and Becky. Becky and Sasha have always been my favourite of the 4 horsewomen.
And they've been so kind to me when I've come back there, so they're great.
Awesome. Who would be your dream opponent, past or present? Anybody that you've not wrestled?
Sherry Martel.
Oh, okay.
She's incredible. Yeah. Sherry Martel.
Yeah, awesome answer. Brilliant answer. Okay, for when I speak to the guys, I always ask Austin or The Rock. I'm going to ask you Trish or Lita.
Trish.
Oh, I was a Lita guy myself. Oh, screw it. Rock or Austin. Let's ask Rock or Austin as well.
Oh gosh.
That's a tough one.
I can't choose.
9 times out of 10 when I ask somebody, they say The Rock. I don't know why. They always take their time and then they go for The Rock. I was always Austin.
I kind of feel Austin. I mean, if I had to choose, I'd say Austin.
There we go. Brilliant. Good.
Don't want to choose though, because I love them both. They were both great.
I was going to ask who your favourite of the 4 horsewomen were, but you've already said Sasha and Becky. So how about, and I really like this question, I always get really cool, different, varied answers. If you could have a dream dinner party with 3 female wrestlers, past or present, who would they be?
Oh my.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tougher one.
Well, put Maddie and Beth out of it because I've had dinner with them. Oh my goodness. Sherry Martel for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you threw me off with this one. Elizabeth.
Oh yeah, of course.
Gotta throw her in there, and it's only 3.
Yes. Yeah. One more.
One more. Let's do someone these days. I'm gonna say Liv Morgan.
Oh, okay.
Liv Morgan.
Why Liv? Just a fan? Are you a fan?
I enjoy her. I enjoy her wrestling. I enjoy her gimmick. Yeah, and she's from New Jersey.
Oh, there you go then. You've got to represent. New Jersey. I like Liv a lot. I think she's one of the most improved wrestlers of the last couple of years. Yeah. She's really taken her opportunity really well.
Just throw a shocker in there. Yeah, Liv Morgan.
That's an interesting dinner party. Definitely lots to talk about at that party. Awesome.
Got my girl with me, talking to my old school friends.
Yeah, absolutely, and the woman that you idolized as well. Doesn't get much better than that. Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you for that. It's, like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me, Cara, Cherry, whatever people want to call you. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I really appreciate it. But before I let you go, where can people find you, like on Instagram? Any channels, any shops that you've got, anything like that?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm DDC Chick. On Twitter, I'm former Diva Cherry, so FMR Diva Cherry. I'm on Cameo as well. Yeah, I don't have a Facebook, so the Facebooks that are out there are not me. I don't have a Facebook, so yeah. So those are the main ones.
Awesome, brilliant. Thank you, like I said again, so much, everybody. Thank you for watching and listening to this episode. I hope you had as much fun as I did conducting the interview. Like I said at the start, please hit subscribe, please hit follow. All the information for where you can find Cherry will be in the About section underneath the video or the audio, wherever it is. And that's it. Yeah, thank you very much for joining me again, and I'll look forward to catching you next time on It's My Wrestling Podcast.